There's a new poll out from CNBC, and they asked a bunch of questions specifically of the rich. They spoke to 514 people with assets of $1 million or more, and the responses are all over the place. They're really varied, but they're also really, really interesting. Some things are not what we'd expect. So first of all, here are some things we probably would expect. When asked about the number one factor in obtaining their wealth, rich people ranked hard work first. So 23% of them said hard work, followed by smart investing was 21%, then savings 18%, education ranked fourth at 10%, followed by frugality, and then inheritance. And then dead last, only 1% cited luck as the top reason for their wealth. I'm calling bullshit on these guys. Because guess what, man? They can pretend all they'd like, but anybody who's rich, there is at least somewhat of an aspect of luck involved in it. I'm not saying it's the biggest part. I'm not saying it's even a moderate part. But for every single person who's rich, as long as it's not inheritance, of course, there's an aspect of luck involved. And that leads me to the second point here. Inheritance? A lot more people are rich from inheritance than they're letting off right here. And you know that they could just be bullshitting too. Like, for example, if you go talk to Donald Trump, he'd probably tell you, I got rich through hard work and being smart. And then, meanwhile, his daddy was worth $400 million. So, no, you would have been rich either fucking way, son. Don't try to, work your way around it and say, no, it's because I worked hard. And you're going to ignore the gigantic head start you had on everybody else? So their self-perception is granted at least a little bit off. Let me give you some more information here. Multimillionaires, or people worth $5 million or more, were more likely to cite running my own business as their top wealth factor. Now, again, let me pause here for a second. Yeah, you can do pretty well in many circumstances if you do run your own business. The problem is, how do you get to run the business in the first place? People who become entrepreneurs are usually originally from at least upper middle class families because they have a cushion to fall back on if shit goes south. If you're just from a middle class family or a lower middle class or a poor family, you don't have the capital to fall back on, so you can't really afford to take the risk of running your own business. They continue and say, women were 3 times more likely to cite inheritance as their top wealth factor, so they're more honest, 15% versus 5% for men, while men were more likely to cite savings, 20% versus 14% for women. Most still believe in the American dream. No shit, they're all rich. So fully 94% said the American dream is achievable. When asked to define that dream, the largest number, 45%, said the American dream is, quote, prosperity and upward mobility through hard work. Only 18% defined it as spiritual and temporal happiness more than material goods. Multimillionaires, however, were far more likely to define the dream as material rather than more abstract. 63% to 4%. You believe that? So the richer they are, the more likely they are to say, money is happiness, as opposed to, money isn't necessarily happiness. There's might be a lot more that goes into it. 81% said they don't feel embarrassed by their wealth, quote, because I earned it. And only 5% said they feel a sense of guilt about the wealth they possess. More than half said anyone in the U.S. can become wealthy if they worked hard. And here it gets interesting. Here is where it's stuff that we wouldn't really expect. 51% believe inequality is a, quote, major problem for the U.S. So a majority of people who make over $1 million. Okay, good for them. More than half said cultural issues and broken families also prevent people from attaining wealth, so they become conservative douches again. But then only 6% said that people worth less do not work as hard as those with wealth. So there they become a liberal again. See what I mean? They're all over the place with their responses. They're like, yeah, broken family and values, and this is the problem. And, oh yeah, no, that doesn't mean that they don't work as hard if they're poor. Wait, so which is it? You're kind of contradicting yourself here. Well, do give them credit for that number, though. That 6% number is big. That they're saying, look, even if they're middle class or poor, they can still be busting their ass and just not making a lot of money. So credit to them for that. And then finally, here are the solutions that they were in favor of. So how many were in favor of an increase for educational opportunities for the less wealthy? 83%. Well done. I totally agree with them. How about enhancing savings incentives and opportunities for the less wealthy? 64% were in favor of that. How about higher taxes on themselves? 64% of the rich want higher taxes on themselves. There, I really applaud them. When it comes to increasing the minimum wage, 63% say increase the minimum wage. Again, a tremendous majority. Credit to these guys for that. How about more government programs to aid the less wealthy for such things as home purchases, retirement, and healthcare? There, only 34% said they wanted that. So they, again, swing to being more conservative on that issue. When it comes to reduction of unemployment benefits to encourage more work, only 13% want to reduce unemployment benefits. So the overwhelming majority are in favor of unemployment benefits. And then there's a few other things there that are largely irrelevant, other and none of the above. So, look, overall, what's the takeaway? The takeaway is that, look, in some ways, they do kind of date themselves. The rich do kind of date themselves, and they maybe give themselves a little bit more credit than they should. Like maybe there's a little bit more luck that goes into them becoming rich, or a lot of them probably have an inheritance and they pretend like they don't, and they say, I would have made it either way. But other than that, they're not as douchey as we all would have guessed. And here's the main point, man. Here's the difference, okay? The difference is when you're talking about people who just make $1 million or more, or have $1 million in assets or more, all these people aren't necessarily what's called the donor class. See, the donor class is where it gets interesting, and it's the donor class that really runs our politics. You could be a rich person and not donate to politicians, and in that case, they don't give a shit what you say as much as they don't give a shit what somebody who makes $30,000 a year says, right? But the people who they do care about, they're called the donor class. It's like 0.05% of the population is people who've donated at least $10,000 or more to different politicians during the election cycles. So it's those rich people and the corporations and Wall Street and the special interests. And what you find overwhelmingly is that the donor class that does give money to the politicians for different political goals and cutting their own taxes and rigging the system in their own favor, those are the people who are really douchey with what they believe across the board. So while your run-of-the-mill rich person would say, look, yeah, raise my taxes, it's fine, of course. Raise my taxes and we'll set up some sort of a system to increase education and all this other stuff to help people, right? Yeah, raise the minimum wage, no problem, right? The donor class, so the richer people who actually give to politicians, they are the ones who say, no, don't raise the minimum wage because that'll cut into my profits and my company's profits. Don't tax me more because I want to be even more greedy and pretend like I could take my money to the grave. So, look, what we should do is we should be more specific and geared in our attacks on the rich, because we're not, really going after everybody who's rich in this broad sense. I have no problem with LeBron James or Oprah or small business owners who have been tremendously successful. All I have a problem with is the people who got rich by rigging the system, and they want to take away everybody's equal opportunity. And that's not just this broad category of the rich, that's specifically the donor class. They're the ones with the biggest problems.